Nobody expected the moment that was about to unfold. Not the broadcasters. Not the thousands packed inside the stadium. Not even the young Filipina standing courtside. Then suddenly, the president of Italy rose from his seat in the royal box and walked directly toward her. A 20-year-old player from the Philippines who had already become the biggest story of the tournament. And within seconds, the entire arena fell silent. Rome, Italy, May 10th, 2026. The atmosphere inside the Foro Italico was electric long before the semifinal even reached its climax. The historic venue shimmered beneath the warm Roman sun, marble statues towering over the glowing red clay as fans filled every section of the stadium. Italian flags waved proudly across the crowd, but something unusual stood out among the sea of green, white, and red. Scattered throughout the stands were clusters of Philippine flags, larger and louder than anyone had seen before at a European tennis event. Every rally seemed to shake the arena. Cameras flashed nonstop. Commentators raised their voices trying to capture the intensity of the moment. But above the roaring crowd, inside the exclusive royal box, the atmosphere carried a different kind of weight. Former champions, federation executives, and powerful European figures watched the match with quiet focus. And seated among them was one man nobody expected to become part of the story. Sergio Mattarella, 84-year-old president of the Italian Republic, had arrived without spectacle or media attention. No dramatic entrance, no public announcement, just a quiet appearance to witness what was rapidly becoming one of the most unforgettable moments of the tournament. He had quietly taken a seat in the front row earlier that morning, almost unnoticed by the crowd around him. The invitation had come from Italy's Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup champions following their recent international victories, and he had accepted without hesitation. Only days before, Sergio Mattarella had welcomed many of those same athletes, including Italy's biggest tennis stars, into grand halls of the Quirinale Palace. During that ceremony, he spoke with humility rather than celebration. "I do not want to be considered a lucky charm," he had joked softly, "because I certainly am not. But the level of our tennis players, both women and men, gives Italy every reason to believe in this tournament." Now, seated high above the clay courts of the Foro Italico, the Italian president watched the semifinal with calm silence. His expression barely changed as point after point echoed through the stadium. At 84 years old, he carried the stillness of a man who had spent a lifetime observing history unfold before him. Then, during a routine changeover, something unusual caught his attention. Across the royal box, partly hidden beside one of the massive marble pillars overlooking the court, sat a young woman few people seemed to recognize. Her left ankle was heavily wrapped in a compression bandage. She wasn't being shown on the giant stadium screens. The announcers hadn't mentioned her name once. Yet the small group gathered around her made one thing immediately clear: Philippine flags. Dozens of them. President Mattarella slowly leaned toward a nearby tournament official and asked a simple question: "Who is she?" The official lowered his voice respectfully. "Mr. President, that is Eala from the Philippines. She had to withdraw because of injury. She was forced to withdraw after injuring her ankle." For a brief moment, Sergio Mattarella said nothing at all, but he already knew who she was. By that stage of the tournament, nearly all of Italy did. Not because Eala was competing for an Italian championship, but because she had completely transformed the atmosphere of the Foro Italico. Across the city of Rome, Philippine flags had appeared in numbers rarely seen for a foreign athlete. Her supporters filled sections of the historic venue with chants that rolled through the ancient arena like thunder. "Eala! Eala!" The sound echoed against marble statues and stone terraces that had witnessed generations of European sporting history. Yet somehow, this 20-year-old from the Philippines had turned one of Italy's most iconic tennis venues into something almost unimaginable: a home stadium for someone born over 11,000 kilometers away. The president continued watching her quietly from across the royal box. Then he spoke. "I would like to meet her." The words were calm, almost casual, but the reaction around him was immediate. Slowly, President Mattarella rose from his seat. The entire royal box seemed to freeze. Not with drama, not with panic, just a sudden awareness that something unexpected was happening. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Officials exchanged uncertain glances. Security personnel instinctively straighten their posture. When the president of Italy stands during a live semifinal at the Italian Open, people notice. Even the television cameras began to react. The broadcasts have been focused tightly on the baseline rally unfolding below, but within seconds the lenses slowly tilted upward toward the royal box. Searching for the source of the movement that had suddenly captured everyone's attention, Sergio Mattarella moved quietly through the royal box without drawing attention to himself. He passed rows of VIP guests, Federation officials, and the bronze statues honoring generations of Italian sporting icons. Step by step, he made his way toward the far corner of the seating area, where a young Filipina sat partially hidden behind a marble column, her ankle wrapped, her tournament already over. Alex Eala looked up. Her expression changed instantly. First confusion, then recognition, then complete disbelief. Around the stadium, the Filipino supporters seemed to sense that something extraordinary was unfolding even before they could fully see it. A chant slowly rose in stands. Quiet at first, then growing louder with every second. Eala! Eala! The sound rolled through the ancient terraces like a wave crashing against stone, echoing across a venue that had hosted some of the greatest moments in tennis history. President Mattarella finally stopped directly in front of her. He extended his hand. Senorina Eala, he said warmly, it is an honor to meet you. For a brief second, Alex appeared frozen by the moment. Then she smiled softly and reached out to shake his hand. The honor is mine, Signor Presidente. Down on the clay court, the semi-final continued. Players battled through long rallies under the Roman sun. But inside the royal box, almost nobody was paying attention anymore. Even the commentators seemed caught off guard. Mid-sentence, their voices faded as television cameras focused entirely on the scene unfolding above the court. An 84-year-old president and a 20-year-old tennis player standing face-to-face inside one of the most historic arenas in world sport. The crowd watched in silence. Then President Mattarella began to speak, his voice calm, measured, and deeply sincere. I have been watching you, Sergio Mattarella said softly. Not only today, but throughout this entire tournament. The way your people support you, it is extraordinary, truly moving. The president paused for a moment, looking out across the packed terraces of the Foro Italico, where Philippine flags still waved proudly among the crowd. Italy is honored to have welcomed you here, he continued, and we sincerely hope you will return. Then something happened that nobody in the royal box appeared prepared for. Without consulting advisors, without reading from prepared notes, and without any formal announcement from tournament officials, President Mattarella slowly turned toward the television cameras broadcasting live across the stadium. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The Italian Republic recognizes exceptional contributions to sport, culture, and the strengthening of friendship between nations, he declared calmly. It is rare for one athlete to represent all three at the same time. The noise from the semifinal below suddenly felt distant, almost irrelevant. Alex Eala has brought something very special to Rome this week, he continued. Not only through her tennis, which has been remarkable, but through her spirit, her resilience, and the extraordinary connection between herself and the people who came here to support her. Another pause followed, the kind of silence that seems to freeze time itself. Then came the words nobody expected to hear. Therefore, the president announced, it gives me great pleasure to declare that Alexandra Eala will be awarded the Order of the Star of Italy, one of the highest honors the Italian Republic can bestow upon a foreign citizen. The reaction inside the stadium was immediate. Gasps rippled through the royal box. Commentators stopped speaking altogether. Even spectators who could not fully hear the announcement sensed from the crowd's reaction that something historic had just happened. And at the center of it all, Alex stood completely motionless. Her expression carried the unmistakable look of someone trying to process words that still did not feel real for several long seconds. Alex Eala didn't react at all. Not with tears. Not with celebration. Not even with a smile. It was the expression of someone hearing words so unexpected that the mind needs time to catch up before emotion can arrive. She simply stood there in stunned silence while the reality of the moment slowly settled over the stadium. Because the honor President Sergio Mattarella had just announced was not symbolic. It was not casual. And it was certainly not something awarded lightly. The Order of the Star of Italy carries enormous historical weight within the Italian Republic. First established in 1947 in the aftermath of World War II as the Order of the Star of Italian Solidarity, it was originally created to recognize individuals who helped rebuild Italy during one of the darkest chapters in the nation's history. Decades later, under President Giorgio Napolitano, the order was restructured and modernized, but its prestige never diminished. Today, it is reserved for foreign nationals who strengthen Italy's cultural influence, international friendships, and global reputation. Within the Italian honor system, it stands among the Republic's most respected distinctions, personally conferred by the sitting president himself. And until this moment, it had never been associated with a tennis player, not once, which made the entire scene inside the Foro Italico feel almost surreal, because Eala had not even won the tournament. Her run in Rome had ended abruptly in the third round after a grade 2 ankle sprain forced her to retire mid-match against Elena Rybakina. On paper, her campaign looked unfinished. The official record would show only a withdrawal, not a championship celebration. But statistics were no longer the story. Something far larger had happened in Rome that week. But by then, it was obvious the story had never truly been about wins, losses, or tournament statistics. What Eala accomplished in Rome had moved far beyond the boundaries of a scoreboard. Throughout the week, she transformed the atmosphere of the Foro Italico in a way even longtime tournament staff struggled to explain. Philippine flags seemed to appear overnight, spreading across the stadium in numbers larger than almost any visiting supporter group the tournament had seen in recent memory. And somehow, hearing her name echo through ancient Italian terraces felt surreal and completely natural at the same time. Eala! The chants rolled through a venue built upon more than 2,000 years of history, creating a collision of cultures that should have felt unusual, yet instead felt strangely inevitable. Without ever trying to, Alex had become something larger than a tennis player. She became a bridge, a connection between nations, generations, and people who saw a part of themselves reflected in her journey. And once President Sergio Mattarella made his announcement, the story instantly exploded far beyond the borders of Rome. In the Philippines, the reaction felt less like sports news and more like a national moment. Television broadcasts interrupted regular programming. News tickers flashed across major networks. Social media platforms flooded with the same headline repeated over and over again as millions struggled to process what had happened inside the Foro Italico. The response was immediate and emotional. Pride, shock, joy, disbelief, tears. From Manila to Cebu to Davao, Filipinos around the world shared clips, screenshots, and emotional messages celebrating a moment that felt almost impossible just a few years earlier. One viral post captured the feeling perfectly. From a scholarship at the Rafa Nadal Academy to receiving an honor from the President of Italy, she is proof that dreams do not recognize borders.